I pay over $130,000 a year, so my daughter can attend the best private school in the city. I cover my wife's online marketing courses. I work 60 hours a week in 100-degree heat to build a home I can no longer even call my own. Then one day I came home and saw my wife folding lingerie, packing to spend 15 days with her ex-boyfriend to help him heal. My daughter stood beside her, looking at me like I was the villain in this story. I didn't yell. I didn't hit. I carried her suitcase to the car, kissed her on the forehead one last time, and the next morning I sat down with my lawyer. When she came back, she was pregnant. No apology, no remorse, just an announcement. And she thought I would stay, raise another man's child, under the roof I built with my own hands. She didn't know. In those 15 days, I didn't break. I rebuilt my entire life, and she will never be part of it again. If you've ever thought you couldn't move on, hear the rest of this story. I'm Jack Reynolds, 41, construction manager based in Dallas, Texas. For the last 2 decades, I've built shopping centers, office towers, and apartment complexes that reshape skylines. My projects are worth tens of millions. My annual income hovers around $400,000. I've worked through blistering summers, winter freezes, and the kind of deadlines that crush lesser men. My wife, Amber, worked from home in social media marketing, $65,000 a year on a good run. We'd been married 17 years, together for 20. We had one child, Emily, who just turned 16. I mention the money because it matters. It's not about bragging, it's about stakes. Everything I earned, I poured into our life. The mortgage, Emily's tuition, Amber's career dreams, vacations, and a retirement plan that would let us both breathe by 50. On paper, we looked perfect. Friends called us solid. Family said we were the example to follow. Behind closed doors, there were cracks. Small ones, I thought. But cracks in concrete grow if you ignore them. I just didn't realize how deep they went until the day I walked into our bedroom and saw her packing that suitcase. It was a Friday afternoon. I'd just driven back from a site inspection in downtown Houston, $60 million commercial complex ahead of schedule, under budget. I stepped through the front door expecting the usual. Amber at her desk, Emily buried in homework, maybe the smell of dinner starting in the kitchen. Instead, I found Amber in our bedroom, a suitcase open on the bed. At first, nothing unusual. She traveled sometimes for client meetings. But this was different. She wasn't throwing things in at random. She was folding carefully, choosing pieces like she was curating an exhibit. And then I saw it. The red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the lingerie I'd never seen her wear. "Where are you going?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Travis needs me," she said, her ex from college. I hadn't heard his name in over a decade. Apparently they'd reconnected on Instagram months ago. His wife had left him. He was in a bad place. And according to Amber, she was the one who could save him. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her fold another dress. "You're packing lingerie to help a friend?" I said. She spun around, her face already defensive. "Don't make this something it's not. He needs someone who understands him." "And that's you?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "We have history. I know how his mind works." Before I could respond, Emily appeared in the hallway, eyes flashing with teenage righteousness. "Dad, stop being so controlling. Mom's just trying to help someone and you're making it all about you." Amber's eyes lit up. Backup had arrived. "See? Even Emily understands. This is why our marriage has problems, Jack. You don't trust me. You work constantly. You're emotionally unavailable." I told her we talked just last night about renovating the bathroom. She shot back, "That's not talking, that's logistics." Emily folded her arms. "Mom deserves to have friends. You can't just prison her here." I looked at them both, realizing this wasn't a spontaneous conversation. They'd discussed this, planned it, the ambush, the guilt trip, all set before I walked in. I let the silence stretch until Amber looked away. Then I said, "Okay." She blinked. "Okay? Go help Travis. Take all the time you need." That wasn't in her script. She hesitated, studying me like I'd just switched languages. "You're okay with it?" "I trust you," I said flatly. "If you say he needs help, then help him." Emily frowned. Amber looked suspicious, but she couldn't argue without exposing herself, so she zipped the suitcase in silence. I carried her bags to the Mazda CX-5 I'd bought her last year, kissed her forehead, told her to drive safe. Watched her reverse down the driveway, probably wondering why I wasn't fighting. Here's what she didn't know. I'd already seen the credit card statements, charges from Miami restaurants over the last 2 months, tolls from the I-95, and a purchase from a lingerie boutique that didn't match anything in our house. She'd been visiting him already. And while she drove east toward the coast, I headed downtown. My lawyer, who handled my company contracts, also did family law. By the end of the meeting, we had a plan. The first 3 days, Amber played the part. She sent proof of life texts. Travis is doing better. Made him eat today. Watching movies to keep his mind off things. Each message carefully crafted to sound wholesome, almost noble. I replied with single words. Good. Nice. Okay. On day 4, the text stopped, but her Instagram didn't. She'd forgotten she'd taught Emily how to navigate social media, and Emily had shown me how to watch stories without being seen. Amber's stories were a highlight reel of everything she wasn't telling me. Sunrise walks on Miami Beach, breakfast at oceanfront cafes, gym selfies, well, Travis's gym selfies, with Amber visible in the mirror behind him. Grief looks different for everyone, I suppose. By day 5, I started making moves. I redirected my salary to a new bank account, removed her as an authorized user on my credit cards, changed the beneficiaries on my life insurance and retirement accounts from Amber to Emily, with my brother as trustee until she turned 25. Every change documented, every step calculated. I wasn't reacting. I was building my exit. On day 6, something on my bank app caught my eye. Our joint offset account, the one tied to our mortgage, was down $12,000. The transfer had been made 2 weeks before her mercy mission. The memo line read, "Marketing conference deposit," except there was no conference. I called her largest client, a friend of mine who owns a building supply company. He hadn't heard a word about any conference, but he did mention Amber had been distracted lately, missing deadlines, and turning in subpar work. That's when I brought in a forensic accountant. I wanted a complete snapshot before she came home. What he found was infuriating. Beyond the 12 grand, Amber had been quietly moving smaller amounts for months. 500 here, 300 there. Always with neat explanations. Client dinners, software subscriptions, online courses. The total? Another $8,000. $20,000 siphoned from our household to prop up her ex's lifestyle, while I was out in the Texas heat, running multi-million-dollar projects to keep our family comfortable. It wasn't just betrayal of marriage, it was theft, and I now had the receipts. By the end of that week, my lawyer had everything ready. Divorce petition drafted. Custody proposal giving me primary care of Emily, with reasonable visitation for Amber. Property settlement outlined, precise to the dollar. I wasn't just reacting to infidelity, I was dismantling the legal and financial ties that gave her access to my life. Meanwhile, Emily had started her own quiet campaign. She'd text me things like, "Dad, you're being passive-aggressive," parroting phrases that didn't sound like her at all. When I asked what she meant, she'd snap back, "You know what you're doing," making Mom feel guilty for having feelings. What feelings, I thought. The feeling of spending my money on another man. But I didn't push. I knew teenagers talk, and in our neighborhood, parents talk even more. By Friday, word had spread through Emily's school community about Amber's brave decision to support an old friend in crisis. Brave, that was one word for it. I simply documented everything. Bank statements, screenshots, timestamps. By the time Amber's car rolled back into the driveway, I was ready for whatever came out of her mouth. Day 15. I was in my home office reviewing blueprints for a new high-rise in downtown Dallas when I heard tires crunching on the driveway. The front door opened. Heels clicked against the hardwood floors I'd installed myself a decade ago. "Jack?" she called, her voice bright. She appeared in the doorway. Fresh tan, new haircut, wearing a sundress I didn't recognize. She was glowing, like she'd just come back from a honeymoon. "How was it?" I asked. That was all she needed. She launched into a perfectly rehearsed monologue about Travis's mental health, how she'd saved him, how meaningful it had been to help someone in crisis. Every word polished, practiced, probably in the car from Miami back to Texas. When she finished, I just said, "Dinner's at 7. Your parents are coming. My parents too. Her face tightened. I'm tired from the drive. 7, I repeated. She didn't know that this dinner wasn't a welcome home meal. It was the stage for everything I'd been preparing, and the audience was already on their way. By 7 o'clock, the table was set. Amber had changed into something more conservative, clearly aiming to look respectable in front of both sets of parents. Her father still thought she was some kind of marketing genius. Her mother preferred to believe Amber's lifestyle came from her own earnings, not mine. Dinner began politely. Small talk about Emily's school, the weather, my latest project in Dallas. I kept the conversation moving, letting everyone settle in. Then Amber cleared her throat, placed her napkin on the table, and said, "I have something to share." Emily smiled faintly, like she already knew. "I'm pregnant," her mother gasped. "That's wonderful, Jack. You must be—" "It's not mine," I said, cutting clean through the moment. The room froze. Amber's face drained of color. "It's Travis's," I continued. Her father stood, hands flat on the table. "What the hell is this?" Amber stammered. "Dad, I can explain." "No, I'll explain," I said, pulling out my phone. I showed them screenshots, credit card records, and the timeline. Proof she'd been with him for months. Nobody touched their food after that. Amber's mother started crying. Her father looked like he was ready to put a fist through the wall. My parents sat silent, eyes locked on me, waiting. Emily stared down at her plate, jaw tight. Amber reached across the table toward me. "Jack, we can work through this. Couples therapy, a blended family." "Get out," I said. "This is my house too." "No, it's not." I reached into the folder beside me and slid a document across the table. "This deed is in my name only. Bought it before we married. Your name isn't on anything, except the Mazda, which you're welcome to keep." She blinked, searching for footing. "You can't just—" "I can. I have. Your things are in the garage, packed while you were gone." Her father stood, his chair scraping the floor. "We're leaving." Amber tried to protest, but he cut her off, guiding her toward the door. Emily stayed seated, not even glancing at her mother. The front door closed. I sat back down, finished my steak in silence, and felt the first wave of peace I'd had in months. The next morning, I was up before sunrise. Coffee in hand, I reviewed my checklist one last time. Locks changed, security codes updated, bank accounts separated, insurance and retirement beneficiaries reassigned, every loose thread tied off. By 8 o'clock, I was in my truck, headed to Amber's sister's place in Fort Worth. She'd spent the night there. I parked at the curb, walked to the front door, and rang the bell. Amber answered, still in pajamas, eyes swollen from crying. "Jack," I handed her an envelope. "Divorce papers. You've been served." She tore it open, scanning the pages. "I already did everything," I said. "Lawyer's name and number are at the bottom. Don't call me unless it's through him." Behind her, her sister hovered awkwardly, not meeting my eyes. By noon, Amber's social media lit up. She posted about emotional abuse, finding herself, brave choices. Tagged her location at a Miami gym, Travis's gym. She didn't realize I'd been documenting everything for weeks. And soon, she'd learned that in my world, receipts speak louder than hashtags. I started with her family. They got the full package first. Bank records showing the transfers, screenshots of her messages to Travis from months back, the photos from Miami. I laid out the timeline that proved conception happened during her mercy mission. Her father didn't call me, but word got back through mutual contacts. He'd cut her off completely. Her mother tried to mediate until she saw the text where Amber called them walking ATMs with opinions. That ended her sympathy. Next came her clients. Dallas isn't a small town, but the business community is tighter than people think. My buddy who owns the building supply company dropped her the moment he saw the proof. Others followed. It turns out, when a social media manager gets caught lying publicly on social media, it's bad for business. By the end of the week, Amber's income had evaporated. The same followers who once liked her inspirational quotes now flooded her comments with words like liar and homewrecker. She'd tried to build a brand on trust and connection, I dismantled it with nothing but the truth, and I wasn't even close to done. Travis lasted exactly 6 days after Amber told him about the pregnancy. 6. She'd driven to Miami thinking she'd move in, play house, raise their baby together. Instead, he met her at a cafe on Collins Avenue, public place, lots of witnesses, easy exits. He told her he wasn't ready, that his ex-wife was considering taking him back, that the last 2 months had been a mistake. Then he blocked her number, changed his gym hours, made his Instagram private. 2 days later, my phone rang. Amber's name lit up the screen. I answered. "He abandoned me, Jack. I'm pregnant and alone. How can you be so cold?" "Practice," I said, and hung up. An hour later, she showed up at my house. Emily was at school. I'd expected this. "Please," she said at the door. "I made a mistake." "No, Amber, you made choices. For months, you took money from our home. You got pregnant by another man. You gambled everything for him, and he folded." Her face crumpled. I didn't invite her in. I closed the door and let her cry on the porch until she finally drove away. That afternoon, Emily came home early from school. She saw her mother's SUV pulling away from the curb, and when she walked inside, she asked, "Was Mom here?" "Yes," I said. She wanted to talk. Emily didn't ask what about. She just nodded, dropped her bag, and went to her room. Later that night, over dinner, she brought it up herself. "Mom's been texting me nonstop, says you're shutting her out, that you're trying to turn me against her." I put my fork down. "Emily, you're smart enough to make up your own mind. But remember, people show you who they are, and they don't stop being that person just because they're family." She didn't respond right away. Then she said quietly, "She told me Travis is the father." I didn't believe her at first. I looked at her. "And now?" Emily's eyes hardened. "Now I do, and I'm done taking her side." It wasn't a victory celebration, but it was the first sign that the truth was starting to matter more to Emily than the story her mother had been feeding her. It didn't take long for Amber to find another distraction. 3 months after Travis vanished, she met a personal trainer from Austin, another muscle-bound savior type. Within weeks, she was posting gym selfies with him, tagging locations like they were on a world tour. Emily didn't comment, but she watched. So did I. 2 months in, the trainer was gone. Amber was pregnant again. This time, there wasn't even the pretense of a committed relationship. Her parents stepped in temporarily, covering her rent and buying baby supplies, but they weren't fooled. I heard from her mother one evening, her voice low, embarrassed. "Jack, this can't go on. She's making the same mistakes, over and over." I didn't offer sympathy. You can't save someone who doesn't want to change. By the time the second baby was born, Amber had moved into a small apartment in Fort Worth, living on whatever her parents would give her. No stable income, no partner. Just 2 children from 2 men who wanted nothing to do with her. The pattern wasn't new. It was just finally visible to everyone. 7 months into her second pregnancy, Amber showed up at my office building downtown. Security called from the lobby. "There's a woman here with a baby," the guard said. "Says she's your wife." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "Is she threatening anyone?" "No, just crying." "Then escort her out." The next day she came back, and the next. Finally I went down. She was a wreck, hair unwashed, clothes stained, River squirming in a second-hand carrier, her belly huge with baby number 2. "Jack, please," she said, tears streaking her face. "I need help." "No," I said. "These are Emily's brothers. She should know them." "Emily doesn't want to know you, or them." "I could die, Jack. We all could. That's not my problem to solve." She started sobbing louder. People in the lobby turned to watch. I let her cry until she was spent. Then I told her, clear and even. "You traded a $400,000 life and a stable family for Instagram moments with men who wouldn't claim you. You made your choices. Live with them." And I walked back upstairs. That night, Emily came into the kitchen while I was cooking. She had her phone in hand, screen lit up. "Mom posted about you," she said flatly. Amber's Facebook status read, "My ex-husband is heartless. He won't help me or his children's siblings. He's moved on like our vows meant nothing. Emily didn't hesitate. She typed a comment right there in front of me. Cruelty is cheating on your husband for months and expecting him to raise another man's kid. Everything else is just consequences. Then she hit post. 15 minutes later, the post was gone. Amber had deleted it, but enough people had already seen it, and the screenshot Emily took would keep it from disappearing completely. By the end of the week, word had traveled through our extended circle. Friends of friends, business contacts, even parents from Emily's school. Everyone now understood that Amber's sob story had a glaring hole in it. She wanted sympathy. Instead, she got silence, the kind that's colder, heavier, and harder to escape than outright criticism. And she'd created it herself. While Amber's life unraveled online, mine was moving forward. I'd started seeing Rachel, a structural engineer I'd met through a downtown project. At first it was just coffee, running through load calculations and site plans. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner turned into breakfast. One afternoon, Rachel dropped off revised blueprints at my house. Emily was homesick from school. I came back from a site visit to find them at the kitchen table, talking about architecture programs and design software. They'd been at it for 2 hours. After Rachel left, Emily said, "She's smart, smarter than Mom. Not the I think I'm smart kind, actually smart." It wasn't just approval, it was relief in her voice. She saw the difference between someone who built things and someone who destroyed them. For the first time in a long while, the house felt steady. No hidden agendas, no whispered fights, just calm. Amber eventually heard about Rachel. Dallas is a big city, but news travels. Her response came in the form of 17 text messages. I didn't answer a single one. Amber didn't stop with texts. She started showing up at Emily's school events, the rowing regatta, the science fair, the winter formal, always with River in a carrier, looking exhausted and desperate, belly already showing from her 3rd pregnancy. At first, Emily ignored her, walked the other way without a word, but after the winter formal, she came home visibly angry. "She's trying to guilt me," Emily said. "Is it working?" I asked. "No, it's pissing me off. She chose that baby over our family. Now she wants sympathy because it's hard. She made her bed. Now she can lie in it." "Tell her that," I said. "I did," Emily replied. She cried. I walked away. I could see it in her face. She wasn't just defending herself. She was drawing a boundary, the kind that doesn't move once it's set. Amber thought public appearances would sway Emily back. Instead, every encounter only pushed her further away, and I wasn't about to interfere with that process. News of Amber's 3rd pregnancy didn't come from her. It came from her mother, who called me one evening in tears. "She's done it again," her mother said. "Met some guy online, another fitness trainer, moved him in after 3 weeks, pregnant in 2 months, and now he's gone." I leaned back in my chair. "What do you want me to do about it?" "Nothing. Her father says one grandchild is charity to her stupidity. She's on her own this time." And they meant it. They cut her off completely. No rent, no groceries, no money for the kids. Amber didn't take long to panic. A week later, she was at my office building again, this time with River on her hip and a belly big enough to tell the whole story. "I'm desperate, Jack," she said, blocking the doorway. "Your daughter's brothers, they're not my responsibility," I said, brushing past her. She shouted after me, but I didn't look back. The elevator doors closed, sealing the distance I intended to keep for good. Amber didn't let it drop. She waited outside the building at lunch, cornered me on the sidewalk. River clung to her shoulder, eyes wide, while her free hand rested on the swell of her stomach. "Jack, please, you can't just walk away. These are Emily's brothers. Family." I stopped, met her eyes. "Family isn't just blood, Amber. It's behavior. And your behavior burned every bridge you had." Her voice rose, desperation cutting through. "I could die in childbirth. What would you tell Emily then?" "The same thing I'd tell her now, that you chose this. Twice. 3 times. And you thought someone else would clean it up for you." She started crying harder, drawing stares from people passing on the street. I didn't care. "You made these choices because you wanted what you wanted in the moment. I'm not here to rescue you from the bill." Then I walked away, leaving her standing there with 2 children, one born, one unborn, and no audience left willing to applaud her performance. That night, Amber tried a new tactic: social media. She posted a long, tear-stained selfie with a caption about being abandoned by the man who vowed to love me through everything and raising 2 boys alone while he plays house with another woman. It didn't take long for Emily to see it. She walked into the living room, phone in hand. "You've got to read this." I skimmed the post, then handed the phone back. "Do you want me to respond?" She shook her head. "Already handled." Her comment was still at the top. "Maybe if you didn't cheat on him for months, steal his money, and get pregnant by 2 different men, he wouldn't have left." Just a thought. Within an hour, Amber deleted the post. But like before, screenshots were already circulating. The people who mattered knew the truth. The rest could draw their own conclusions. Amber wanted sympathy. All she was getting was silence, or worse for her, blunt reminders of the truth she'd worked so hard to rewrite. While Amber tried to salvage her image, Emily's future was taking shape. She'd applied to MIT on a whim, encouraged by Rachel after a long conversation about engineering. I still remember the day the envelope came, thick, official. Emily stood in the kitchen, hands shaking as she opened it. "Full scholarship," she whispered, then looked up, eyes wide. "Dad, I got in." I hugged her, feeling more pride than I'd ever felt on any job site. Rachel was right behind me, grinning, telling Emily she'd known it all along. Amber found out through the grapevine and sent me a text. She needs her mother there for this. I didn't respond. Emily didn't want her there, and I wasn't about to override that. Instead, we started making plans. Boston in the fall, housing near campus, a summer trip to get her settled. For the first time in years, every conversation in our house was about building something new, not repairing something broken. Amber's chaos felt a world away, and that's exactly where I intended to keep it. A month after Emily's acceptance letter, I proposed to Rachel. Nothing flashy, just the 2 of us on the back deck at sunset, a bottle of wine between us, the smell of fresh cedar from the new pergola I'd built. She said yes without hesitation, and when Emily found out, she hugged Rachel first, then me. "You're keeping me as best person, right?" Emily asked, half serious. "Absolutely," I told her. Amber heard about the engagement within days. Dallas may be big, but news travels fast. She sent a flood of messages from numbers I didn't recognize. The same recycled lines about moving too fast, Emily needing stability, the sanctity of marriage vows. I responded once. "You broke those vows years ago, the day you packed that suitcase for Miami." Then I blocked every number she used. Rachel and I started planning a small ceremony. Emily helped pick the venue. The whole process was calm, joyful, everything my first wedding hadn't been. For the first time in decades, the future felt like mine again. Planning the wedding with Rachel and Emily was nothing like my first time around. No power struggles, no hidden agendas, just 3 people making decisions together and actually enjoying it. Emily took her best person role seriously. She picked out her own outfit, a tailored navy suit with a silver tie, then started working on a speech she refused to show either of us until the big day. Amber, of course, tried to insert herself. Word got back to me through mutual acquaintances that she'd been asking about the date, the location, whether children were welcome. I didn't need to guess her plan, show up uninvited, make a scene, try to flip the narrative in public. Emily was the one who shut it down. "She's not coming, Dad. Don't even tell her when it is." That settled it. We kept the guest list tight, the venue undisclosed except to those who needed to know. Amber could keep spinning her stories online. The real story, our story, was about to take a major step forward, and she wouldn't be anywhere near it. The morning of the wedding was quiet, almost peaceful. The venue, a small vineyard outside Austin, was bathed in early light. Rachel was with her sister, getting ready in the cottage next door. I stayed in the main house with Emily, who paced the kitchen rehearsing her speech under her breath. "You're going to make everyone cry, aren't you?" I asked. "That's the plan," she said, smirking. Guests began to arrive. Close friends, family, people who'd stood by us through every storm. No drama, no unexpected faces. The ceremony itself was simple. Rachel walked toward me, sunlight catching in her hair, and I realized I wasn't just marrying her. I was closing the last open wound from my past. Emily stood beside me, steady as a rock, handing over the rings with a grin. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the applause felt like more than celebration. It was approval. It was the universe saying, "You made it out. You built something better." Amber never knew the time, the place, or the vows that replaced the ones she'd shattered. After dinner, the lights in the Vineyards barn dimmed, and Emily walked up to the small stage. She didn't look nervous, just steady, confident. She adjusted the microphone and smiled at Rachel and me. "My dad builds skyscrapers," she began, "but his greatest construction project was rebuilding our family after someone tried to demolish it." The room went silent. He taught me that strong foundations are made of respect, integrity, and consequences, and if you do it right, they're earthquake-proof. I felt my throat tighten. Rachel reached for my hand. Emily looked right at me. "Thank you for not being weak. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like. Not loud, not violent, but steady. And thank you for choosing someone who chose us back." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. When she stepped down, I hugged her so hard she laughed. That speech didn't just close a chapter. It sealed it. There was nothing left for Amber to twist, nothing left to take. We were a new family now. We hadn't planned to tell Amber about the wedding at all, but social media did the job for us. A week later, she saw photos posted by a mutual acquaintance. Rachel in her dress, Emily in her suit, me with a ring on my hand. That night, the emails started, then texts from unfamiliar numbers, even a handwritten letter that showed up in my mailbox. All variations of the same theme. I was replacing her, erasing our history, damaging Emily. Emily read the letter before I did. She actually laughed. "She really thinks this is about her," she said, handing it back. "Everything's about her, in her mind anyway." I asked if she wanted me to respond. "Why waste the stamp?" she said. So I didn't. Amber had lost the right to be part of our milestones a long time ago. The wedding only made that final. She could watch from the outside if she wanted, but the view was never going to change. She was no longer in the picture. Amber's lawyer finally sent their counterproposal. Alimony, half my savings, a claim to the Malibu house I bought before we ever met. I sat in my office, the Pacific stretching beyond the glass. I wasn't angry anymore, just stunned at how far she'd push her delusion. I thought of the years I came home caked in dust, muscles screaming, all so she could post pictures in dresses she never paid for. Now she wanted to slice that life up and take the choicest cuts. My lawyer barely looked at the paperwork before shaking his head. "Prenup holds. We'll reject it." It struck me. She wasn't bargaining for survival. She was bargaining for ego. And that made her reckless. Reckless people don't care who gets hurt, as long as they feel like they've won. That night, Emily found me on the deck. "She called me," she said flatly. "Told me you're trying to erase her from my life." I looked at her. "Do you believe that?" Emily didn't blink. "I was there, Dad. I remember everything." She erased herself. 16 years old, and she spoke with a clarity I'd only found in my 40s. We sat in silence, watching the tide come in. The air was cool, steady, no storms, no shouting, just peace. It was in that quiet I realized Emily wasn't just surviving her mother's chaos. She was studying it, learning exactly what not to be. That might be the only gift Amber ever gave her. 2 days later, Amber posted a long caption on Instagram about toxic control and healing from narcissistic abuse. The comments were full of supportive strangers. Rachel showed me over breakfast. "She's fishing for sympathy. She'll get it. From people who don't know the truth," I said. By evening, one of my former clients had sent me screenshots. Someone had dropped the court records and photos into her comment section. The tide turned fast. Supporters turned skeptics. Skeptics turned silent. Amber deleted the post, but the internet has a way of remembering. Every lie leaves a footprint, and she'd been walking barefoot across wet cement for years. A week later, Emily played me a voicemail over dinner. Amber's voice was trembling. "I've been hospitalized from stress. Your father doesn't care if I live or die." Emily rolled her eyes. She posted gym selfies the same day. Rachel didn't even look up from her plate. Some people use the truth. Some use filters. It wasn't the lie that got me. It was the intent. Amber didn't just distort facts, she weaponized pity. In her mind, anyone immune to it wasn't protecting themselves. They were the villain in her script. One afternoon, I got an email from a woman in Oregon. She claimed she'd met Amber on a single parent's Facebook group and was considering helping her financially, but decided to check her out first. "I Googled her," she wrote, "and your name kept coming up. Looks like I found the truth." It was surreal. Amber's chaos had crossed state lines, reaching strangers I'd never meet. I replied politely, thanked her for reaching out, and told her to keep her money. When I showed Rachel, she just shook her head. Even in exile, she's still trying to find a stage. By late spring, Amber's usual tricks weren't working. The dramatic posts, the sympathy calls, the promises to change, none of it landed. Her audience had either blocked her or seen through her. It reminded me of watching a quarterback without a playbook, running in circles, hoping something sticks. I wasn't rooting for her failure. I just wasn't invested in her success. She'd chosen her path long before I stopped answering her calls. And the further I got from her noise, the more I realized peace wasn't something you begged for. It was something you built, brick by brick, until the walls kept the chaos out. A subcontractor from a past project came by to drop off materials. Midway through our chat, he hesitated. "Your ex, she applied to do social media for my wife's boutique." I kept my tone even. "Hope it works out for her." He laughed awkwardly. "My wife Googled her, found the court documents. Let's just say she's moving on to another candidate." That night, I told Rachel. She poured a glass of wine and said, "She's running out of rooms to walk into." And she was right. Amber wasn't just broke, she was running out of places to pretend she wasn't. At a construction industry dinner, a colleague leaned over. "Pretty sure I saw your ex at a hotel bar in San Diego last month, with a different guy each night." I just smiled. She's networking. It didn't matter if it was true. What mattered was realizing her world had shrunk to fleeting connections and borrowed attention. Mine had expanded. Contracts in 3 states, a stable home, a daughter thriving. 2 paths, both chosen. One built to last, one destined to collapse. Out of nowhere, Amber's lawyer emailed. She wanted one final settlement offer before dragging things to court. My lawyer replied with one line, "The prenup is binding. Our position stands." I didn't even have to say a word. That night, Rachel and I celebrated with takeout and a bottle of wine. It wasn't the money that mattered. It was the confirmation that the walls we'd built around our life were holding strong. Amber could throw herself against them all she wanted. She wasn't getting in. Emily aced her finals and got early acceptance into a summer internship program in Chicago. She texted me a photo of her acceptance letter before telling anyone else. I called immediately. "Proud of you, kiddo." Her voice was bright. "Feels like I'm building my own life now." She didn't mention her mother, and I didn't either. We didn't need to. The absence said more than any words could. By early summer, Amber had gone quiet. No posts, no calls, no third-hand updates through friends. It was as if she'd vanished. Rachel noticed. "Think she's finally done?" I shrugged. "She's never done. She just changes the set." Whatever she was plotting next, it wasn't my concern. My life was too full. Rachel's promotion, Emily's upcoming internship, the beach house plans moving forward. If Amber wanted a stage, she'd have to build it herself. And this time, I wouldn't even be in the audience. In early March, a mutual acquaintance sent me a link. Amber had posted another life update on Facebook, this time a filtered selfie with the caption, "Raising 5 beautiful children on my own, stronger every day. God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers." The comments were sparse. A couple of generic, "You go, girl" replies from strangers, then silence. Emily saw it too. "She's still trying to sell a story no one's buying," she said, scrolling past without another word. I didn't react. Amber's online persona had become its own echo chamber. No friends, no family, just a handful of disconnected followers who didn't know the history. Rachel and I had bigger things to focus on. We were finalizing the interior design for the Malibu house, preparing for Emily's summer in New York, and mapping out a trip to visit her in June. Amber could keep broadcasting to the void if she wanted. For us, the signal was clear. We'd moved on, and we weren't looking back. June came fast. Rachel and I flew to New York to see Emily during her internship. She met us outside her company's Midtown office, wearing a hard hat and carrying rolled-up plans under her arm. She looked like she belonged there, confident, focused, already part of the professional world she'd been chasing. That weekend, she took us on a tour of the project she was working on, explaining structural details with the same enthusiasm I'd had in my 20s. Rachel listened intently, asking questions only an engineer would know to ask. I just watched, proud. Over dinner in a little Italian place in Brooklyn, Emily said, "This is what I want. Not just the work, the life, stability, purpose. I don't ever want to live the way Mom does." "You won't," I told her, "because you learned early what not to accept." She nodded, smiling. In that moment, I knew she wasn't just surviving her past. She was designing a future her mother could never derail. When Emily's internship wrapped in August, she came back to Malibu for a short break before her fall semester. She'd grown even more confident, more sure of herself. Her stories over dinner were full of names and places that made it clear she was building her own network, her own life. One evening, we sat out on the deck watching the sun sink into the Pacific. She leaned back in her chair. "You know, every time I come home now it feels lighter, like the air's different here." "That's because there's no one trying to set fires anymore," I said. Rachel laughed softly. "You've built fireproof walls, Jack." I shook my head. "No, we built them, all of us." Amber was still out there somewhere, Cleveland last I heard, raising kids with different last names, posting half-truths online. But her world no longer intersected with ours. And as the waves rolled in beneath us, I realized that was the greatest peace I could have asked for. In September, Amber made one more attempt to claw her way back into relevance. A clip surfaced on a local Cleveland community page, her standing at a microphone during some single mother's empowerment event, telling a heavily edited version of her life story. In her version, she was the victim of a cold, controlling husband who replaced her, and a daughter who had been turned against her by lies. No mention of the affairs, no mention of the stolen money, no mention of the pregnancies with men who vanished as quickly as they'd arrived. A few comments praised her bravery, but it didn't take long for people who knew the real story to chime in. Screenshots of her past posts, photos from Miami, and even Emily's public comment from years earlier started popping up under the video. By the next day, the clip was gone. Amber hadn't realized that the internet doesn't forget, and neither do the people she'd burned. For us, it was nothing more than background noise. But for her, it was another door slammed shut. By the time October rolled around, Amber had faded completely from our day-to-day. No calls, no messages, no unexpected appearances, just silence. Rachel and I threw ourselves into work. She'd been promoted again, overseeing multiple structural projects across the state, and I was managing a high-profile development in downtown Dallas. The Malibu house became our sanctuary on weekends, a place where the world felt far away. Emily was thriving in her second year at MIT, balancing advanced coursework with leadership roles in 2 student engineering groups. She'd started talking about grad school, possibly in Europe. One evening, while we video called her from the Malibu deck, she said, "It's crazy how much can change when you remove the wrong people from your life." Rachel smiled. "That's not crazy, Emily. That's just making room for the right things." We hung up feeling proud, not just of her accomplishments, but of the steady, unshakable life we'd built, the kind Amber could never touch and never take apart again. Late one Friday night in November, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender's name made my stomach tighten for half a second. Amber. I hadn't heard from her directly in over a year. The subject line read, "For closure." Against my better judgment, I opened it. The message was short. "I'm sorry for everything. I know I can't undo the past, but I hope someday you'll tell Emily I tried." I stared at the screen for a moment, then closed the email without replying. Rachel noticed. "From her?" "Yeah, it's just words, same ones she's used before." Rachel nodded slowly. "Then leave it where it belongs, behind you." And that's exactly what I did. I didn't forward it to Emily. I didn't bring it up. Because closure doesn't come from an email written at midnight. It comes from knowing the fire's burned out, and you're standing somewhere it can't reach you anymore. That year's Thanksgiving was the first one Emily could fly home from MIT for a full week. She arrived late Saturday night, dropping her bag just inside the door and heading straight for the kitchen, where Rachel was pulling pies from the oven. "It smells like home in here," Emily said, hugging her. The week was easy. Morning walks along the beach, long dinners with laughter instead of tension, and quiet nights by the fire. No phone calls we didn't want, no unexpected knocks at the door. On Thanksgiving Day, we set the table out on the deck, the ocean as our backdrop. Halfway through the meal, Emily looked up from her plate. "Do you realize this is the first holiday I can remember without any drama at all?" I thought about it, then nodded. "That's how it's supposed to be." She smiled, and in that moment I knew she'd carry this version of family into her own life someday, the version we'd fought to build and refused to let anyone destroy again. In early December, while scrolling through LinkedIn, I saw a familiar name pop up under People You May Know. Amber. She'd updated her profile, freelance social media consultant, motivational speaker. The headline below read, "Helping Women Rebuild After Heartbreak." Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked. Her feed was a curated mix of filtered selfies, vague inspirational quotes, and videos where she spoke about overcoming toxic relationships. Not once did she acknowledge her own role in creating the chaos. Out of habit, I checked the comment sections. They were mostly empty, save for a few generic, so inspiring messages from strangers. No family, no real friends. I closed the tab without engaging. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I finally had no need to. That night, over dinner, Rachel asked, "Something on your mind?" I shook my head. "No, just glad that chapter's closed." And for the first time, I realized it wasn't just closed, it was sealed. Permanently. Emily flew in just before Christmas, her second winter break from MIT. She looked older somehow, not in years, but in presence. More sure of herself. She spent the first few days catching up with Rachel over coffee in the kitchen, the two of them deep in conversation about engineering projects and internships. I'd walk in, hear phrases about load distribution or material tolerances, and smile. Emily wasn't just following in my footsteps, she was carving her own path. One afternoon, we took a long walk along the beach. The air was crisp, the sun low on the horizon. Emily kicked at the sand and said, "You know, I barely think about Mom anymore. It's like she's just some distant story I heard once." "That's because she's not part of the life you're living now," I said. Emily nodded. "And I don't want her to be." Hearing that, I knew she'd reached the same place I had years ago, where the past no longer had a claim on the future. We rang in the new year at the Malibu house, just the three of us. Rachel had opened a bottle of champagne, and Emily poured herself sparkling cider. We stood on the deck, watching the fireworks scatter over the ocean. Rachel raised her glass. "To building things that last," Emily added, "and to not letting anyone tear them down." We clinked glasses, and for a moment, the only sounds were the waves and the distant bursts of color in the sky. Later, by the fire, Emily pulled out her laptop to show us designs she'd been working on, concepts for a sustainable high-rise project she wanted to pitch to her professor. Rachel leaned in, giving feedback, her tone both proud and professional. I sat back, just watching them. The life we had now wasn't loud or dramatic. It was solid, dependable, exactly what I'd wanted for years. And as midnight faded into morning, I knew there was nothing from the past worth trading for what I had in front of me. Mid-January, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Jack? It's Amber." Her voice was thinner than I remembered. "I'm not calling to fight," she said quickly. I'm in trouble. I need help." I didn't ask what kind. It didn't matter. "Amber, the last time I helped you, you used it to dig yourself deeper. I'm not doing that again. This isn't about me, it's about the kids. Those kids have fathers. I'm not one of them." There was a long pause. Then, "So that's it?" "That's it," I said, and hung up. Rachel, hearing the end of the call, asked, "You okay?" Better than okay, I said. That was the easiest no I've ever given. And I meant it. Every time Amber reached out now, the weight was gone. The past no longer had any hooks in me. In early February, Emily called from Boston with a voice full of barely contained excitement. Dad, I just got accepted into the summer research program in Zurich, fully funded. They only take 10 students from the whole country. I couldn't help grinning. That's incredible, Em. You realize that puts you in the top fraction of a percent, right? Rachel leaned over the speakerphone. And you'll get to work on those sustainable design models you've been obsessed with. Emily laughed. Exactly. This is going to open so many doors. After the call ended, Rachel and I sat in the quiet for a moment. She's unstoppable now, Rachel said. Yeah, I agreed. And the best part is, she built this herself. Amber's chaos, her drama, her endless spiral. It was all a distant shadow compared to the bright, deliberate path Emily was walking. And I knew, watching her reach this next milestone, that no matter what storms came, she'd never let herself get pulled back into the wreckage her mother lived in. Late February, Rachel forwarded me a message she'd received through LinkedIn. It was from Amber. It was dressed up as professional outreach, but the core was the same old tune, claims that she'd grown, that she wanted to reconnect for Emily's sake, that life's too short to hold grudges. Rachel didn't even respond. She's fishing, she said, sliding her phone back across the table. That night, over dinner, Emily heard about it and shook her head. She's not trying to reconnect for my sake. She just hates that she can't control the narrative anymore. She was right. Every attempt Amber made to wedge herself back in was less about love and more about reclaiming a version of the story where she wasn't the architect of her own collapse. We didn't reply. We didn't acknowledge it. And for the first time, I realized that ignoring her wasn't just avoidance. It was active protection of the life we'd built, one she had no part in shaping anymore. By early June, Emily was back in Malibu for just a week before heading to Zurich. The house buzzed with preparation, packing lists, last-minute errands, Rachel double-checking her travel documents. One evening, we had a small dinner on the deck, just the three of us. The sunset painted the sky in gold and pink, and the waves rolled steady beneath us. Emily raised her glass of sparkling water. To new chapters, Rachel smiled, and to not dragging old ones with you. I watched them clink glasses, thinking about how far we'd come from the chaos years ago. Emily wasn't just leaving for Switzerland with a suitcase, she was leaving with a foundation stronger than anything I'd had at her age. Later that night, she hugged me tight. Thanks for not letting me grow up in her version of life. You built your own version, I told her. I just made sure you had the space. The next morning, we put her on that flight, proud and completely at peace. After Emily's plane lifted off for Zurich, the house felt unusually quiet. Rachel and I stood in the kitchen, coffee mugs in hand, listening to the distant hum of the ocean. Feels like she's really gone this time, Rachel said, not sad, just reflective. Yeah, I replied, but she's not running away from something. She's running toward it. Big difference. We filled the extra space with small projects. Rachel redesigned the guest room into a reading nook. I finally fixed the deck railing I'd been putting off for months. In the evenings, we'd cook together, talk about our own future, trips we wanted to take, maybe even buying a little place in the mountains for winter escapes. Every so often, I'd glance at my phone, half expecting some drama from the past to intrude, but nothing came. No calls, no messages, no chaos. For the first time in decades, life wasn't something we had to defend, it was something we could just live, and that was worth more than any noise we'd left behind. Mid-July, I was scrolling through a local news site when a headline caught my eye. Cleveland woman faces eviction amid financial dispute. The accompanying photo was unmistakable. Amber, standing outside a run-down apartment building, holding a toddler on her hip while another clung to her leg. I didn't click the article. I didn't need to. I could already fill in the blanks. Unpaid rent, burned bridges, maybe another relationship gone bad. When Rachel came home, I mentioned it. She paused for a moment, then said, "That's sad, but it's not our responsibility." Exactly, I said. It hasn't been for a long time. We ate dinner that night with the sliding doors open, letting the sea breeze in. There was no heaviness in the air, no lingering sense of unfinished business. Whatever storms Amber was weathering, they weren't ours to navigate anymore, and I wasn't about to step back into waters I'd fought so hard to escape. Late one evening, my phone lit up with a video call from Emily. The background showed a bright, modern lab space, papers and models scattered across a large table. "Dad, I have to show you something," she said, angling the camera toward a scale model of a high-rise. "This is my design. My team's submitting it for an international competition." I could hear the excitement in her voice, the same rush I used to feel walking a completed job site. Rachel leaned in from the couch. "It's beautiful, Emily. Strong lines, perfect balance." Emily grinned. "I've been here 6 weeks and I already feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." After the call ended, Rachel turned to me. "She's never going to repeat her mother's mistakes." I nodded. "Because she's too busy building something worth keeping." It struck me then, our biggest victory wasn't cutting Amber out. It was giving Emily a life where she never had to let someone like that in. By late August, Rachel and I had settled into a rhythm that felt effortless. Mornings started with coffee on the deck, the ocean stretching wide and calm. Afternoons were for work, her in her home office reviewing blueprints, me coordinating projects over video calls. Evenings were ours. One Friday night, Rachel came out with 2 glasses of wine and sat beside me. "You realize this is the life we talked about years ago, back when everything was chaos?" I looked around, the steady waves, the warm glow from inside, the absence of anything or anyone trying to pull us apart. "Yeah, took a while to get here, but we made it," she smiled. "We built it." Amber's name hadn't crossed our lips in months, not because we were avoiding it, but because she was irrelevant now, a ghost from a story we'd finished telling. What mattered was here, within these walls, solid, quiet, ours. And every day, I made damn sure it stayed that way. In mid-September, Emily flew back from Zurich for a short break before the fall semester. She came through the arrival gate with a worn backpack, sun in her hair, and that same confident stride I'd seen the day she left. Over dinner, she told us about her project making the finals, how she'd been invited to present in Berlin next year. Rachel listened intently, asking sharp questions about materials and load testing. I mostly just sat there, watching the two of them trade ideas like colleagues. Later that night, Emily wandered onto the deck with me. The air was cool, the waves steady. "You know," she said, "I barely remember what it felt like when things were bad. It's like those memories belong to someone else." "That's because you've been living in something better for so long," I said. She nodded. "Thanks for making that possible." In that moment, I knew the cycle was broken. Whatever chaos had shaped the past, it wasn't touching her future. Not ever again. Some people destroy, and everyone pays the price. Amber did both, over and over again, over. I didn't feed that fire. I let it burn out on its own, far from anything I cared about. Instead, I rebuilt. Not on the old ground, where cracks still hid beneath the surface, but on a new foundation. One I poured with intention, reinforced with boundaries, and kept free from the rot of second chances. Solid, unshakable. Emily thrives because we built something she could trust. Rachel and I stand strong because we never let the past dictate the blueprint. And me? I sleep soundly, knowing that the door we closed will never open again. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Strength isn't in striking back, it's in walking away, locking the gate behind you, and never looking over your shoulder. That's not cold, that's survival. And it's the reason my life now stands taller, stronger, and untouchable.